Oops, what happened there? Oops, no, not yet. So just
How do I stop it?
let me just click it, close it.
Today is Thursday, September 26, 2024, and I call this meeting to order. Denise, can you please continue the meeting?
Thank you for joining us today for the Land Conservation and Development Commission September 2024 meeting. My name is Denise Johnson. I'll make note of a few things, including best practices for participation. Recordings of the commission's meetings are available on YouTube.
Can you bring your mic closer? Yes, thank you. Okay. You might have to bring it like almost touching.
To eat the mic.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. For individuals here in the room who wish to testify, please complete a green comment registration card available on the materials table and hand it in at the sign-in table. While 3 minutes for public testimony is typical, the chair may reduce the time according to the number of people signed up to testify as other schedules demand. For those individuals joining us virtually, please use the public comment sign-up form on our website. Zoom participants, please rename yourself with your first and last name so that we can easily identify you and bring you forward at your opportunity to speak. Zoom participants will be in listen mode only until called on to testify. Again, we thank you all for being here with us today. Chair Hello, the meeting is yours.
Thank you, Denise. We're going to move on to item number 3, which is welcome. It's also our opening of our meeting, a roll call, housekeeping, land acknowledgement, and approval of the agenda. To start this off, Denise, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Warren.
Here.
Commissioner Barbara Boyer.
Excused.
Commissioner Mark Bennett.
Here.
Commissioner Leanne Thompson.
I'm here.
Commissioner Ellen Porter.
Here.
Vice Chair Alan Lazo.
He has an excused absence. Here. Thank you. So we're pleased to be here in Salem for the next 2 days. We're welcoming Commissioner Bennett, which I think will say some more words later on the agenda at his first meeting with us. And he's volunteered to lead us in the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Cheryl, for the privilege of presenting the land acknowledgement specific to Oregon. Indigenous tribes and bands have been with the lands that we inhabit today throughout Oregon and the Northwest since time immemorial and continue to be a vibrant part of Oregon today. We would like to express our respect to the first peoples of this land, the 9 federally recognized tribes of Oregon, Burns Paiute Tribe, Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua and Siuslaw Indians, Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, Confederated Tribes of Siletz, Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs Reservation, Cokeville Indian Tribe, Cow Creek Band of the Umpqua Tribe of Indians, and the Klamath Tribes. It is important that, excuse me, it is important that we recognize and honor the ongoing legal and spiritual relationship between the land, plants, animals, and people indigenous to this place we now call Oregon. The interconnectedness of the people, the land, and the natural environment cannot be overstated. The health of one is necessary for the health of all. We recognize the pre-existing and continued sovereignty of the 9 federally recognized tribes who have ties to this place, and thank them for continuing to share their traditional ecological knowledge and perspective on how we might care for one another and the land so it can take care of us. We commit to engaging in a respectful and successful partnership as stewards of these lands. And we are obligated by state law and policy. We will uphold government-to-government relations to advance strong governance outcomes, supportive of tribal self-determination and sovereignty.
Thank you. So commissioners, I wanted to remind you to complete your agenda scorecard, which looks like this, and it's found in our packet. Before you leave the meeting, this feedback is super helpful for the staff and helps us with our process and logistics. Now we'll move on to approving the agenda. Are there any proposed changes to the agenda by any of the commissioners? Okay. Director Bateman, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you.
Nothing to add. If there are no proposed changes to the agenda, we will adopt, the agenda is adopted. For anybody located in the room, there's a QR code that's available in the room for quick access to meeting materials via a smartphone or tablet. And it's located now right behind me. Anybody needs that. We're going to do quick introductions of the commissioners who will share just their name and region of representation. And then we'll ask the DLCD staff and guests to introduce themselves. Please remember that we'll have more time tomorrow for the commissioners to give updates on their region. So we'll start off with Commissioner Thompson.
Leanne Thompson, Coastal Commissioner.
Mark Bennett, Eastern and Central Oregon.
Chair Aniele Halova of the Portland Metro Region. And then online.
Commissioner Warren, Southern Willamette Valley.
Commissioner Porter, Southern Oregon.
Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to turn to
Intros around the room.
around the room. Yes, I did say that. Director Bateman.
Thank you, Chair. Brenda Bateman, Director of the Department of Land Conservation and Development.
Steve Shipsey, Counsel to the Commission.
Thank you. Kirsten Green. I serve as Deputy Director and the agency's tribal liaison at the Director's Delegation.
And maybe we'll start.
James.
James Kolpovich, IT support.
And then we'll just go in the front row and then weave around.
Josh Hartwich, Assistant Director, Chief Operating Officer.
Nikki Killingsworth, both Shepherd from Central Oregon, even though you guys follow Eastern Oregon.
Leo Ryan, Communications and Media Coordinator.
Matt Crawl, Planning Services Division Manager.
Hi, Brandy Nichols, Chief Financial Officer. Good afternoon, Sarah Taylor, Senior Rules Coordinator.
Gordon Howard, I'm the Community Services Division Manager. I'm Tyler Potter, I'm the HR Manager.
Lisa Phipps, Ocean and Coastal Services Division.
Sadie Carney, Communications and Engagement.
Alexis Handler, Legislative and Policy Manager.
And you can start there, manager of the housing division.
Nice. Thank you for all those intros. I just wanted to make sure, Denise, that your mic is working. We don't feel like it. But you're important. So I want to make sure. Okay. For the people on, can you guys online hear when she speaks?
She's pretty quiet.
I think it's the mic.
Commissioner Bennett's mic is kind of quiet as well.
I think yours is working though. You just look at your face. Okay, I just want to make sure it's right before we continue.
Yeah. Direction. You can't, Denise's mic is not working. So we can go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay, so we'll move on while we get the mics checked. So we're turning to our next agenda item, number 4, Director's Report with the Department of Land Conservation and Development Director Brenda Bateman.
Good. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a director's report for you this afternoon. For the record, Brenda Bateman, Director of the department. And I wanted to start with a couple of announcements. You know, we always have new folks joining us. So we have one new staff member to bring to your attention this quarter, as well as a couple of promotions that we're very excited about. I'm just going to go ahead and introduce virtually here. I don't think our new GIS intern is in the room. Really? No.
Hey.
We're just going to put you on the spot and have you come forward here to the microphone. Give us your name, your title of what you're doing, and maybe just a little bit about where you've come from and the project you'll be working on for us. This is very exciting for us.
Okay, so I hope everyone can hear me online. But yeah, my name is Madeline, and I just recently graduated from Oregon State University, and I'm the GIS intern here. I will work with the community services team, and my project will be with it will relates to the urban growth boundaries historical archives. But yeah, so nice to meet everyone here, and I'll give it back to you.
Well done. Thank you,
you.
Madeline.
Thank you.
So you may remember, commissioners, that we recently got a grant from the Oregon Geographic Information Council to update our UGB layers. And that's the work that Madeline will be doing for us over the next several months. And you can imagine this is pretty fundamental to what we do and the information we provide to the public. So we're very excited about Madeline and her work. Then we also have two promotions internal to the agency. These may be names that you recognize. They've been promoted from within, and they are both pointed at our relatively new and emerging area of offshore wind energy. And so the first promotion is Cynthia Smith, who is moving over to our coastal program, and she will be working on our offshore wind energy enforceable policies. She'll be our specialist in that area. And then Jeff Burright, who up until very recently was our federal consistency specialist, has moved within the coastal program to be the coordinator of our offshore wind energy roadmap, which is a new initiative and is going to be really important for the state of Oregon as offshore wind develops, and that conversation is pretty substantial inside our state. That roadmap is going to help us really figure out what our values are, what we want to see, and how we want this process to unfold here in Oregon compared to some of our sister states. So we're excited about both of those promotions as well. I wanted to direct your attention to the inside, it's page 2 of the director's report. There's a table there, and you may recall that when Governor Kotek came on board at the beginning of her administration, she laid out a number of expectations for agencies and their directors. And it was a long list of things that are really quite common sense and are things that all agencies should be thinking about and should have been thinking about all this time. And I'm always one to boast, right? So this agency, and it was already doing this when I got here, was already thinking about many of these items and had done quite a bit of work already in these areas. And so we were well positioned when these expectations were put in place. We were well positioned with regard to our DEI plan, our strategic plan, our IT strategic plan, and many of the things that you see here on the list. These are reports and metrics that the governor put in place and asked us to report on as a baseline within the first 12 to 18 months of her administration. And then, interestingly, of course, that wasn't it. That wasn't all, but there's now a regular or routine reporting cycle for each of these reports. So some of these things that we were hot off the gate and doing really well in the first couple months, we're up for renewal already. And it's time to report in again. So some of these things we're just now doing for the first time under this administration. So continuity of operations plan, which is about halfway down your table, is one that we will be completing for the first time under this administration and turning in here in the next couple of days. And then the other one that's new or that we'll be doing for the first time is that last row, which is a 360-degree performance review for the agency director. And so this fall, we'll be conducting a performance review. This commission has always had the practice of doing that, but these questions are going to be slightly different. Where the state as an enterprise is using Gallup poll to conduct these surveys so that now there's comparability between agencies and amongst states. So this is a much bigger enterprise. And we'll be sending out those sort of pre-negotiated questions this fall to all the commissioners, to all staff, and to partners in the land use planning space. Interesting, because I'm still going around doing my meet and greets. I've been here for 2 years. I'm still meeting people, of course. So I'm excited that in this past summer, I've been able to connect with more people, even more people, and had a chance to spend some time in the Portland area this summer where I really hadn't before with local officials, both appointed and professional staff and electeds. I've also spent some time in this past summer at the Government to Government Summit with our 9 federally recognized tribes. I've been on a housing tour, and I've been back over again to the east side of the state to meet even more colleagues. So a lot of the folks that I've had a chance to connect with for the first time in person, they'll be also receiving this survey. And it'll be interesting, I think, to hear from folks who might just really have met me in passing, and others I've of course worked more closely with over the past many years. So we'll try to get the survey out as broadly as we can to folks and see what their impressions are. And then, as you'll recall, or some of you may know, on the off years, we do evaluation just within this commission. So every other year is a 360, and then on the off years is more close to home coming from the commission.
And I had that question when I read this because I was like, I feel like we've done this before, but it's just the new kind of standardized format. That's the difference.
Exactly. Yes,
Okay.
Chair. Let's see. So I'm happy to take questions on any
Commissioner-
of these
Commissioner Bennett?
reports. Yeah.
Director, I think that when we look at audit accountability, that an opportunity is missed here by not stating that there were no audit comments. By just putting in it looks like it's just non-applicable. And I think that the agency and staff need to be commended because you don't have audit comments. No one coming from accounting, like my colleague here, it's an important notation that, and you should herald those things, really.
That's a good point. Thank you, Commissioner.
Chair, I have one. question.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, ma'am. Excellent point, Commissioner Bennett. So, succession planning, you just got here.
It's much broader than that, Commissioner. Actually,
Could I hear more?
yeah, the question, and I'm going to do this off the top of my head, but the question that's been posed to agencies is to take a broad look, not only at some of our more senior members that are eligible to retire in, and at some agencies, that's, a very significant percentage of the staff, but also to ask a question about the types of roles that people play and what positions are there where you're only one deep and you don't have a deep bench. And if that person were to leave tomorrow, you'd have lost institutional knowledge, or you should have been cross-training all along. So some really nice, broad and deep questions that are being posed as part of that exercise. And we've already that's one where we've already turned in a plan quite a while ago, and it's coming up again immediately. It asks you to work with a couple of positions that are very technical and maybe only one deep, and work directly with staff to work on desk manuals and protocols and documenting what are decisions that you make and how do you make those and where do you keep your files, and just all of those types of documentation. So it's a good exercise and is an example of something that we all should have been doing all along, but always gets pushed to the bottom of the to-do list, right? So now it's an expectation, which is very helpful.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, we've had only I think one discussion about succession planning. I think it's been since you've been here with, with Steve. And thinking about the amount of knowledge he has on the legal framework and to ensure that there are people coming in that can absorb that knowledge also. So that's one example that we've talked about.
Council, would you like to boast about what you're doing on that front?
I'm being pushed out. Everyone.
No.
No, we are deepening the bench, and have a number of my colleagues now involved in our matters and gaining experience, and hopefully, I don't know that I've succeeded in showing them where things are in my office. But there's a wealth of information there too. So yeah, that piece is moving.
Yes. Thank you.
Glad I asked.
And then just for me, because for the hybrid sense, is it going to be like a hand raised that I can see for the folks on online?
It should be, yes.
Okay.
If they need to ask a question, they can raise their hand.
Okay, because I didn't know there's like a bar that might be over if Commissioner Warren raises his hand. Sorry, I'm being technical right now. I just want to set it up for the future in case you raise your hand. Okay, thank you, Director.
Thank you. And of course, there's much more detail in the director's report that we're happy to tackle at any time, but that's in front of you. And the other piece, two other pieces that I did want to draw to your attention while I have you is on the very last page, an org chart. And that's a practice that we try to remember to do every time because every time we meet, we've got more and different staff or folks that have moved around. So hopefully that's something that you can keep in front of you for reference as folks are up in front making presentations. It'll help connect you to their names and where they are in the organization. I can just help you keep track of folks as we go about making our announcements. So that's there. We try to attach that every time and keep that updated for you each time you meet. And then the last piece that we wanted to touch on and really spend the bulk of our time on today is the policy agenda.
Oh, can I ask some questions before then?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So, I've talked to you about my excitement for looking at all of the grants that we're giving out to ensure that it's the least painful process that someone can have. Can we be a role model within the government, the state of Oregon, given that I have experience applying for grants in other departments. And so I just sort of wrote a note to myself that was like software, consistency, and ease. And I didn't know if you wanted to speak at all toward, because we've always been giving out a lot of grants and now we have so many more to give out. And just ensuring that if somebody's applying for one and they get that down and then they try to apply for another one, that they're not reinventing the wheel. And then so consistency and ease is what I've talked about. But I didn't know how the software plays into that consistency and ease.
Chair, I would say that at this stage, we are still not to a point where there's one software platform and one branded look that you'll see every time you are working with the department for a grant. So we're not there yet. However, I am pleased to announce, and it didn't make it into the staff report because it's late breaking news and they haven't joined us yet. We are busy building out our team on the IT and the data governance side of the house. And so we've got a number of folks who will be joining us and will be here next time you meet that we'd like for you to meet, who really have a lot of experience building platforms and being in conversation not only with the program staff that are working on in these areas, but also the customers and asking, what are your pain points? Where do you get stuck? What would you like to see? And asking those questions before they develop those platforms. So they're coming. And one of the things that is on the project list in the IT strategic plan is specifically a grants management system, so that is all one platform, not only for the user to use, but for the data that's being collected. Hopefully folks wouldn't have to keep keying things in over and over again. And so that's part of our project list. And unfortunately, of course, those take time to design and roll out and debug and actually have up and running. But that's where we're pointed, and we're pretty excited that we're finally moving that.
How long do you think that would take to do that? I'm just curious. Not an exact. I don't need an exact. Like a year, in the year of.
In the year of, well, I don't know.
Okay.
I would say we probably wouldn't see anything that we're really confident in for a year, I'm guessing, because a lot of that has to do with gaining permission from and going back and forth with our Department of Administrative Services. And so there's a little bit of a lag and a little bit of a check-in, and did you do this piece right before you're allowed to move to the next stage type of thing. It does take time.
Deputy Director Green?
Chair Halova and Director Bateman, Commissioners, I just wanted to let folks know that DAS, Department of Administrative Services, for the entire agency enterprise, is also looking at ease of grants, and they've asked for some models. Director Bateman has asked us to gather our best models to upload for them. We do have 1 and 2 page format. So I will say we have been, I think, exceptionally brief, particularly in wildfire recovery, where we were looking, we had 3 questions to ask communities if they needed any assistance. The housing grants are a little more complicated, a little more in depth. But I'd be pleased to share those examples with you if
Yeah,
you're curious.
that'd be
You can
great.
see kind of what our best practices. We aren't standardized, yes, but we'll get there. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to make a comment because I've been here a long time. I was just really excited by attachment B, which is the org chart, because it's like sort of in a process of kind of building on these different departments within the organization, and just excited to see like a lot of the admin roles start to play and the support staff. So I just wanted to commend the director and deputy director and the department on this new very robust, I feel like, format and governance structure. So
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. We're really pleased too that we've been given the time and the grace to restructure and move things around as best practices would dictate. And I give a lot of credit to our Chief Operating Officer here, Josh Hardage, who is really wanting to make sure that we've got a separation of duties when it comes to accounting, right, and moving some of the bills and the payments through. That we've structured things. Now we're now big enough that we can have a little bit of separation, and we're just really pleased that we're kind of moving into that best practices space. Yes, it does.
nice. Any other commissioner comments before director moves to the next important part of the report? Okay. Director.
I would like to turn the mic over to Alexis Hammer for an update on the policy agenda.
Thank you, Director Bateman, Chair Halova, Commissioners. My name is Alexis Hammer. I'm the Legislative and Policy Manager at DLCD. And just for big picture background, every biennium we present to you a policy agenda and update that agenda halfway through the biennium. The policy agenda is basically a high-level roadmap or just a view of all of the policy development work that we will be doing over the course of the next year or 2 years. And the work is essentially divided between both legislatively directed work and agency initiated work that is within the scope of our existing authority. And further, there are rulemaking elements that are direct policy development. And then there's also work that is towards policy development, such as doing a child care study that we were directed to do by the legislature, where we're looking at this, looking at barriers to the development or the siting of child care facilities. And that is work that will not result in the adoption of a policy, but it will help point the direction for future policy development. And so we are in the middle of a biennium right now, and most of the things you're about to hear from me are things that should not be news, with the exception of Commissioner Bennett. You might not have heard of all of these things, but we've talked about from legislative updates, which in this update, the only things that we are proposing to add to the agenda are legislatively directed, and they came from the short session that ended in March. So real high level, there are basically 4 changes that we are proposing for the policy agenda. They include from the governor's housing bill, Senate Bill 1537, the Housing Accountability and Production Office. This is an item that is not direct policy development, but is a major change for the department, as you all have heard about. We will be establishing a new partnership and office with the Department of Consumer and Business Services, or in the Building Codes Division, to help accelerate housing production throughout the state and support cities in their implementation of state housing code. And I'm just going to go through all of these. If you don't have any questions, we can talk about them in big picture. But the second very significant change is that we will be working on what's called the offshore wind roadmap that came out of House Bill 4080. And this directs the department to look at what enforceable policies could be developed that would help achieve state goals around the development of offshore wind over the course of the coming years, as the Federal Bureau of Ocean Energy Management is pursuing leases for large-scale offshore wind facilities off the coast of Oregon. The third element is Senate Bill 1564, it directs the agency to develop model codes for various housing types and based on the size of cities throughout the state. And so essentially, we would be helping cities have off-the-shelf policies that they could incorporate into their codes or easily modify to incorporate into their codes for the development of single-family homes and middle housing. And then finally, the only item that we are removing from the agenda due to staff capacity at the agency is the coastal access rulemaking. And Lisa, which goal is it that's coastal access? Goal 17 already addresses coastal access. And this rule that we were proposing to amend in this biennium it would just enhance the ability for tribes and Oregonians to have coastal access. And we intend to carry out that work when we have the capacity in the next biennium. Those are the 4 changes, and I'm happy to talk about them when there'll be plenty of opportunity to get into more detail. So that's kind of just the big picture where we're going between now and the end of June.
Nice.
No questions?
Looks like no questions.
Great.
Director?
Thank you, Alexis.
Yeah.
I believe we're running ahead of schedule, but that's the end of the director's report.
Oh.
Unless there are additional questions or observations that you'd like to discuss.
Any other questions or discussion items on the director's report? I had one that's not that important, but since we have the time. I was just curious with the introduction of our intern, which was awesome. I know in the past we've had like an intern program that people came in. I don't remember the name of the program, but I was just curious how do we approach internships as a department?
We have a number of models that we use. I know that we often, on a regular basis, we have our coastal fellows that we bring through, and you've met several of them over the past couple of years. Those programs usually last a year to year and a half or so. And I think we're open to a number of grants, opportunities, and models. We don't have one formal program per se that we're always recruiting for, but we've left the door open when we get grants like we did recently for the GIS piece that fit really nicely. I kind of like that we've got the flexibility to not necessarily manage expectations and not necessarily always promise an internship. And I would say in this biennium, with our budget being a little bit more rocky than we expected, that's worked out really nicely. But we're always open to the formulation of something more formal, or if you have any ideas, please let us know.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, I think we'll move on to the next agenda item, if that's okay with our schedule.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Bateman. So our next agenda item is agenda item number 5, which is the agency requested budget submission. And so the commission will receive an update regarding the items that we're moving forward within the agency requested budget, which is called the ARB, to ask for additional resources in the 2025 legislative session. And so with us, we have Brandy Nichols, DLCD Chief Financial Officer, and Aurora Jadal. Did I get it right? DLCD Legislative and Policy Analyst. And Josh. And you'll introduce yourself, Josh.
Yep. Chair, Commissioners, good afternoon. For the record, Josh Hardage, Assistant Director. And I want to introduce our Chief Financial Officer, Brandy, who will be presenting on the ARB. I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
I'm sorry, this is my first time here. Am I supposed to run the PowerPoint, Denise? Yeah. Apologies, everyone.
All good.
Then you speak really close to the mic.
So we're just setting up the presentation now.
All right, thanks for your patience there for a minute. All right, Chair Halova, Commissioners.
You have to like put it in your mouth. Mo.
Okay. Chair Halova, Commissioners, hello. For the record, Brandy Nichols, Chief Financial Officer here at DLCD. This presentation will give you a brief overview of the department's 2025-27 biennium agency request budget. Budget development began in early 2024. In March and April, DLCD conducted public outreach to highlight its budget needs and gather feedback on priorities from interested parties. During the spring and summer, the department also worked with guidance from the governor's office as it built its budget request package. DLCD submitted its 2025-27 agency request budget to the governor's office on August 8th. For next steps, the governor's recommended budget is being developed and will be released to the public on December 2nd. December 1st is a Sunday, so governor's budget will come out on December 2nd. From there, DLCD's 2025-27 budget will be further developed and finalized during the 2025 legislative session. DLCD's 2025-27 current service level budget reflects the department's recent growth, less one-time investments, and continues existing agency programs in order to achieve its core functions and responsibly manage Oregon's land use planning program. The department's agency request budget also includes 11 policy option packages, asking to expand support for local government land use planning efforts and for meeting housing production requirements. And with that, for the rest of the presentation, I will turn it over to Aurora Juddle, our legislative and policy analyst here. She will highlight the policy option packages included in the department's budget request.
Thank you, Brandy. Okay, is this close enough here?
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. And is it okay if I pull this over here so I can have the slide? Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, Chair Halova, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Aurora Juddle. I am a legislative and policy analyst with the Department of Land Conservation and Development. As Brandy said, I'm here to present about the policy option packages that were included in DLCD's 2025-27 ARB. As you can see on the screen here, we have 11 policy option packages. They fit into 3 different categories here. Brandy had touched on, we're working very closely with the governor's office to develop these POPs. And we had received guidance from the governor's office to keep our policy option packages within 1% of the agency's current service level budget. That comes out to about $508,000 for the department. And so you'll see that the first 2 POPs we have fit into that category. Outside of that guidance, the governor's office was working on separate packages related to each of her priority initiative areas, and one of those is housing. And so we have 9 policy option packages included in our ARB as part of that initiative. The first POP here, POP 100, is titled DLCD Budget Adjustments. This just really shores up 5 positions within the department that we currently do not have full funding for within our current service level budget. And so this includes the Climate Resilience Coordinator, Natural Hazards Mitigation Planner, Floodplain Planner, Natural Resource Specialist, and Legislative Coordinator. And I'll note that the Floodplain Planner and Natural Hazards Mitigation Planner get matching federal funds as well.
Is it Commissioner Thompson? Thank you.
I'm very interested in this POP because counties are really facing a lot of challenges because of state forest policy and federal directives. So the whole idea that we're asking for staff leads me to hope that this will be a potent tool to support the efforts of cities and counties to respond to these challenges. Is that based in reality?
Chair Halova, Commissioner Thompson, thank you for the question. yes, I would say that our staff are hopefully a potent resource as well. And I would also flag that we have grant dollars that are included as part of other policy option packages that I'll get to. I don't know if the director looks like she
Director
also wants to
Bateman.
jump in here, but
Yes, I did want to just clarify for the commission, these are budget adjustments. And so this is to help us, several of these FTEs are like 0.89 of an FTE and not one full one, although there's a full-time person in that position. So a lot of these are really just adjustments behind the curtain. We then have additional asks that we have prepared for additional people, even more, right? Particularly where there are emerging issues such as, new initiatives coming out of FEMA and that sort of thing. These folks, they're fully occupied, and we would need more if we were going to be fully at the table in a way that's significant.
So happy to hear that. Thank you.
yep, thank you. All right, so POP 101 is also included under our sort of 1% guidelines. This is just asking to authorize utilizing funds that are within the current Community Green Infrastructure Grant funds to continue some staffing positions into the next biennium. So out of HB 3409 from the 2023 legislative session, the legislature created the Community Green Infrastructure Grant Fund within the department to fund different community-based projects around planting trees and alternative stormwater methods and things like that to really support local communities on the grounds in building green spaces and infrastructure. And because we were limited in our funding requests that we were allowed to bring forward, we're basically just asking to repurpose some of the funds that we will have carrying over into the next biennium to keep limited duration staff into the 2025 to 27 budget cycle and be able to allocate all of the grant funds that are within that fund. We were allocated $6.5 million from the legislature for the purpose of grants, and with interest and everything that is accumulated over this past year, it'll still leave us with about $6 million to allocate in grant funding, with sort of using these dollars for a different purpose. So now this brings us into our housing policy option packages. And as we touched on with your question, this is where we get into the sort of new program initiatives. One of these and the priority for our department is increasing our geographic information system capacity for housing, or GIS as it's called. This is really important as we've been getting a lot more questions from our local partners and from the legislature to really be able to increase the agency's capacity to aggregate data at the state level and understand where there's different capacity around the state for housing development and also where there are gaps. And so our focus is really going to be on urban growth boundaries and zoning, and specifically bringing historic data that we already have, digitalizing that and making sure that it's sort of available on a timescale viewable manner. And as well, infrastructure data, so that we're able to identify places around the state where there's both opportunity and gaps to offer information to the agency and our partners. We're asking for an additional $3 million in grant funding for local governments. So these are funds that can go directly to city and county governments that we work for to also increase local GIS capacity. And the department's asking for 8 positions within this policy option package. So those are folks that will work with local governments to collect data and input it into our system, who will allocate grants to local governments, and as well who will work on creating outputs that are accessible for our partners and for the public, answering legislative questions and so forth, really turning the data that we have at the department into accessible and usable material for those outside of the department. POP 501 is a follow-up to what you just heard Alexis talking about, the Housing Accountability and Production Office that now rests within the department and the Building Codes Division. In this past legislative session, we received $4 million within a funds for this office, and that's utilized to allocate to local governments to do code updates and so forth to ensure that they are in compliance with state housing law and really helping us move forward towards the state's housing production goals. We are asking to recapitalize that fund with an additional 3.5 million out of into the next biennium. We anticipate allocating about 2.8 million out of the fund this biennium, which will put us at just about 5 million total next biennium to have available for local governments. POP 502, we're calling training planners and permit reviewers. There's a few components to this policy option package, but the real goal here is to be able to provide more resources to local governments to have information and resources available to them around the sort of changing policy landscape, especially around housing. We've heard feedback that it's often difficult for local planners to sort of stay apprised with changing laws and things that are happening at the state level. And so this is really an opportunity for the department to be able to provide more capacity in that region. So we're asking for 2 positions in the department to develop training materials and resources, to hold webinars and so forth, to be able to offer that to local planners, to add 3 regional representatives to our existing regional representative staff, to be able to have each of them have smaller jurisdictions and be able to have more capacity to work with the individual governments within their districts. And then as well, we're working with Eastern Oregon University to create a planning minor track within their university. And then the Rural Engagement and Vitality Center to be able to hire planners that can supervise interns and work in different county and city planning offices in Eastern Oregon to really be able to train up that next generation of planners to then work in those departments after graduation. POP 503 is pretty simple. It is a follow-up on our Oregon Housing Needs Analysis policy, not a simple policy. Just the POP request. And we are asking to increase the grant funding that we have available by 1.5 million. We currently receive 3.5 million, which is already oversubscribed. And so to really be able to offer assistance to local governments who have responsibilities to complete housing capacity analyses and housing production strategies under the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis policy. And then an additional $200,000, there's about a 6-month gap where we're going to be doing rulemaking in the next biennium, but that is not funded within the 2023 to 25 budget. So asking for some funding to have the consultant capacity to keep the facilitation work and research and stuff going until adoption next year. POP 504 is strictly grants, asking for $1 million to be able to provide grants to local governments for wetlands planning, specifically around updating local wetlands inventories. A lot of those are out of date and can create a barrier to developments. We are also working with our partners at DSL. They have sort of a parallel policy option package asking for more staff capacity around reviewing local wetland inventories. And so that's been a partnership in developing this POP. POP 505 is for eliminating middle housing barriers. As a flag, the department is currently working with the governor's office on a legislative concept around eliminating barriers to middle housing production. This policy option package was put in basically to ensure that we would have the resources within the department and also to provide to local governments depending on what policies end up in that legislative concept. And so looking at funding for potential rulemaking that we would have to do within the department or being able to provide grants to local governments in the event that they would have to do code updates coming out of the legislative concepts. Policy option package 506 is tracking housing production by program. Currently, we do collect permitting data that's then funneled to Oregon Housing and Community Services for their housing production dashboard that's part of the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis. And so now we would be sort of creating our own dashboard, but working with that department in parallel to them to track the housing production outcomes that are coming out of different programs, both within the department and sort of across the state enterprise regarding housing, and be able to help inform our other agency partners in the legislature and other interested parties sort of about the most effective methods for spurring housing production and how we can sort of target our resources to be the most effective in the state. POP 507 is also relating to the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis, HB 4063. from this past legislative session required us to ask for this funding actually. So Metro unincorporated communities will now get housing production targets as part of the ONA, and counties will be responsible for that planning work. And so we are putting in a request for grant dollars to help assist the counties in what will be new housing planning work for them out of this policy. And then this is our final policy option package, and this is for a study of how utility franchise agreements can pose a barrier to housing production. This is a pretty sort of new policy area for this state to dig into. These really happen between sort of the city and utility providers and aren't regulated by the Public Utility Commission. That's really for sort of those larger corporations. And so this is just for us to be able to contract with consultants to bring on and help us develop our reports that we can deliver back to the legislature and other interested parties. And that concludes the policy option packages that we have as part of the ARB. Happy to take questions now.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. I would just add that counties also have an interest in those utility franchise fees, not just cities. So please include counties as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. It's a good flag.
Commissioner Warren.
Thank you, Aurora. Great presentation. I really feel like a lot of these pops are reactive to a lot of what we've heard over the last year from local cities and counties. So thank you for including them in our new direction or our next year's direction. I'm wondering if you can provide more information on POP 505 and any specifics about which barriers may be included in this POP.
Yes. Chair Halova, Commissioner Warren, thank you for the question. The policy option package itself does not sort of include any of these policies that would be addressing the middle housing production barriers. The legislative concept is currently under development, and we're not able to sort of publicize what will be in that. The governor is still deciding what she wants to move forward with as part of that legislative concept. But I would be happy to circle back with you when we're able to publicize that information. Thank you.
Commissioner Porter.
Thank you. My question is fairly loosely related to policy option package 500 with the GIS program. Is there any standardization across jurisdictions on the software that is used for any of this?
Chair Halova, Commissioner Porter, my understanding is there is not a standardization across cities and counties on what software they're using for GIS.
And if I could jump in here, it depends on what data set they're working with. At the state level, I mentioned a few moments ago, the Oregon Geographic Information Council. There are some data sets that fall under their jurisdiction, and they adhere to a framework approach. And so there are some standards and some standardized ways of collecting data and displaying it, but only for, a very discrete number of data sets. And so I think our zoning layer is one example that actually falls under OGIC and that folks adhere to. But for the myriad of other information that you bring to bear when you create a map or you're collecting information, there's not consistency. And so there's some debate as to whether more kinds of data or more issues could be brought in under this framework approach. But it's really hard to curate. It's hard to find the folks to provide leadership there. So for the most part, I would say data sets can be quite inconsistent. Part of the reason why we want to really stand up a more substantial GIS shop is to help our local partners and maybe provide a clearinghouse or more of a leadership role in how this data should be collected and displayed so that we can use each other's without too much manipulation of the data, without too much work to get it into something that's useful. We're probably a ways off, but we thought it was time to really create a GIS shop, and we've done a white paper and some analytics around what is most needed and where we could be most useful in this space.
Commissioner Bennett. Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you, Commissioner Porter. Commissioner Bennett.
And thank you, Laura, for the presentation. I guess this is actually for the director. I think that there's going to be a large workload for the department potentially at the intersection of FEMA's floodplain and the T&E species. And I'll just keep it broad at that point. And so I see that staffing on top 100 for that FEMA floodplain is really crucial. I think from listening to my former county colleagues, there's a lot of concern in both at the planning directors and commissioners of how this is going to play out. And the department is going to, whether you like it or not, honestly, be a big player in this one. And even whether or not he deserves to be a big player. That's so I think that it's important that the governor's office and the legislature understand because this could be a significant slowdown to housing if large areas can't be touched because of other constraints that haven't been traditionally applied.
Right. Thank you for the note, Commissioner. One of the things that we've observed and that we've said out loud and as part of our rationale for this policy option package is that legislators and the governor's office and partners ask us questions all the time about where things are located and what places they should avoid when they're developing. And these are questions that we don't have at the ready because the state and, really all of us, it's human nature, haven't necessarily invested in collecting and curating this data. It's not ready to go. And even where some cities or some counties are really strong and they have good data, their peers haven't. And so there's nothing to roll up and answer at the state level. There are lots of gaps and places all over the place where we need to help fill in. So when questions are asked us by the legislature, we have to drop everything we're doing and it's all hands on deck for a period of 2 weeks. And then we can answer the question. And then we get another question. And we're not ready for that either. So it's because we don't have the systems and the layers in place and ready to go. So we're really excited about the hires that we're making in this space and finally trying to get ourselves organized as an enterprise, as a state.
I had a question about the POP 506, and it's mainly to be like, is this the thing I've been saying I want since 2019? Which I can't, it's sounding like the thing I've been saying, but it's not quite there. So the thing I've been saying since 2019 probably, is can we have a dashboard that rolls up, as each city or jurisdiction picks housing production strategies, that we can have a place where somebody can, I'm going to say it again. I've said it so many times, Ethan, probably it's like, you can say like, I want to do, develop something from 0 to 30% AMI. I want it to be home ownership. And we had the gentrification and displacement toolkit as a layer to that. PDF, make that a database where somebody can search and find housing production strategies. So that's what I've been wanting. And the reason I said is it this, because I could imagine having that in conjunction with results. Like if you pick this particular housing production strategy, and then because this POP seems to be around which investments make the most impact. So I couldn't tell like what investments meant in that sense, because housing production strategies sometimes are not investments, they're policy changes. So I was wondering if this was the place where my thing might come in. Or what would we be measuring with this dashboard?
Chair Halova, thank you for the question. This dashboard is really focused on changes to state housing policy and programs. So looking at like recent legislation that's passed or, like the creation of something like HAPO, looking at OHCS's like LIFT funding that they do for homeownership. It's really focused on tracking state housing policy and production changes as it's sort of been laid out. But I think what you suggest is certainly something that we could consider as part of that conversation, or maybe as part of the ONA tracking.
Yeah, because it seems like, we've developed a whole bunch of housing production strategies. Cities might take them and modify them or add new ones. And it would be really great to see if there are patterns around these ones are really good in coastal community, or these really good in this certain circumstance. And I understand that it'd be very hard to do the through line from one particular strategy to one particular home. So I couldn't imagine doing that, but to see which ones are performing versus which ones at that particular time aren't. I say at that particular time because a different market condition, economics, interest rate, another one might perform better. To see somehow which housing production strategies are rising to the top.
Yeah.
So
Chair
the idea
Holofa-
of a knowledge share is really what it was intended to be. So,
Chair Halova?
yes, Deputy Director.
Thanks, Chair Halova, Director Bateman, Commissioners, and Aurora and team. I'm just messaging with Ethan about this because he's your audience for this recommendation. He is in a ONA, Oregon Housing Needs Analysis PMT meeting right now, project management team meeting right now. But he certainly is aware of the request. And so let us visit and get back to you on that. Work with Director Bateman. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for the commissioners to know, one of my pet peeves is developing data resources by practices, and then being in a different form and people starting with a blank piece of paper and saying, let's develop. And I'm like, but there's this whole resource right here. And it would be great if we took the resource that we've already created and then added each new committee that gets together and said, how do we increase housing in the state of Oregon? It's not brand new. And so I was noticing that a lot with a lot of the different groups that popped up. They were literally starting with a blank sheet of paper and no one knew. So if there was one place, everybody knew that was the place, then they would at least review all those before then adding more. I just don't want to reinvent the wheel each time and actually start to see what works. So that's my little speech. Thank you. I don't know if there was any more on this item to present, any more questions?
Chair Halova, if I may, I would just also flag that the reason this is also specifically focused on the housing policy at the state level is because this came out of the governor's housing production framework. And so she directed the department to sort of develop the POP in this way.
Commissioner Bennett?
Maybe this is a question that I should have directed at times, but it just seems to me when the original presentation was put up there were some critical things that really need to continue to be up there, even though they may not make it. And we as a commission really should keep them to the forefront and not lose them. I mean, occasionally other opportunities come along to get them funded. I realize that everything needs to be in keeping with the governor's priorities, but also whenever we have opportunities to expand the vision, I think that that's crucial because there was a lot of merit to the work that went in. And as I look at the org chart, there's a lot of opportunity here, and perhaps it's not the priorities for the day, but we don't want to lose them, and I don't want staff to feel discouraged because sometimes because of the broad picture that it isn't understood of the importance that we as a commission recognize that, although we all have a place on the food chain, we have that also. And as I really commend all the work that's been done, I've been around long enough that I've seen the agency from a kind of a minor backwater to a vibrant moving forward organization. And part of that is because those items are kept in the vision. And so I wanted to commend all of the staff and you and your leadership so that they need to always be brought to us. Now, we understand there's life and reality, and we can't change a lot of times the compass, but
it almost makes me wonder if if this comes back to us, even as the same thing, but whatever the revised version is, that if there could just be an attachment that's like, these are the ones that we didn't move forward, but we still are keeping there. Because I like that idea of keeping the diversity of the things. Yeah.
I have been on other commissions for the state, and sometimes we've said, we understand, but we don't want to lose sight of these items. And we're not trying to be in an adversarial, but it's just, there are some important steps.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that reminder and also the support. And it's worth saying, because this is your first meeting, in terms of where you can find some of the backstory or some of the other ideas that we've had along the way. We started with, of course, a much longer list several meetings ago, and you can find that in our meeting archives. And we've always said that, the agency's budget is a moral document in terms of where we believe we need to go and also what it honestly takes to do the things we're being asked to do. So we laid all of that out, knowing full well we wouldn't get all of it. Those records are in, I'd say, the documentation from 2 meetings ago, I want to say. And so they're still up online. And, as we were developing our agency budgets as an enterprise, we were told you can skinny all of this down to 1% of your current service level, which is why in package 100, you see us just making adjustments. That's all that was 1% for us, was some adjustments. Important ones. We're actually excited. If we could get that done, we'd be happy, or we'd be pleased that we could get that piece taken care of, but there was so much more. And so the package 100 and 101, I believe, are what remain from our original list that fit within the 1%. And then that 500 series falls into a completely different bucket, which is governor's initiatives, governor's priorities, housing. And so that was actually kind of given more leeway to develop those out, show us what you'd be thinking or what might be possible in that realm. And so that's why there's a whole different numbering system.
Yeah. So director, do you think it would be confusing or to like just keep an attachment when we do this to say, this is our things that we want to, and the reason I say that is because I know that what eventually I think became the goal 5 work was something for years we had on this backlist, right? Like we want to do something around cultural resources, and then it finally moved in there just because we've talked about to show people on the outside, what we've been trying to promote internally. So I know it's in the last one, but is there something
we could
like a one
bring it
page
forward? We
just a
could
one
make it a little archaeological dig every
Yeah.
time we have a report that we
Yeah.
bring to you. This is how the layers kind of evolved or where we are now. We're
I'm just thinking
happy
one
to do
page.
that.
like,
Okay.
not even.
We could do that. And it's why when we have opportunities for things like grants that pop up, we can say, oh, we've already thought of this, or we're already prepared for this. Here's what we need and why. And we can go and grab those when we have opportunities come forward. I would say also at this point, I don't think you mentioned this, Aurora, what next steps are in terms of going into the governor's budget. Do you have a slide for that, or should I speak to that?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little
Okay.
bit, Chair Director. Next steps for governor's recommended budget is throughout the fall, their office will be working with us and our budget office and policy folks here, likely to sort of scale our policy option packages within that. And then the governor's recommended budget comes out on the 2nd. Yes. Of December. Sorry. And I think that there is a slide up here that Brandy had prepared that'll hopefully be in the packets, or we could pull it up. But yeah, and so that's sort of the process going forward. And then when the governor's recommended budget is released, that's when we are sort of officially able to advocate for our policy option packages that made it within the governor's recommended budget and how they're sort of formatted and scaled within there.
Commissioner Thompson.
Well, thank you. I want to circle back a little bit. I think the budget's a moral document. I think it's a communication document. So I loved your point about what's ongoing, what's unmet, and what's kind of the bright, shiny new thing. Because I can bring general questions. I can bring experience. I mean, you think you're a backwater planning commissioner, man. So I was a planning commissioner in a couple of different ways and times, but hanging out with you all, oh my goodness, what an education. So I ask general questions, and then there are specific education points. I'm starting to learn more about the complex, adaptive, interactive systems that you're doing, not only with planning, but with all of state government. It's a wonderful thing to learn. And I'm hoping that we find ways as we talk about things together that more people can share in that understanding, because I think it'll improve the quality of governance all over Oregon at every level.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Would you like to talk, or Aurora, you want to talk us through that timeline a little bit?
Sure. In terms of like the governor's recommended budget and then into session, or sort of starting from the beginning?
Either.
Okay. Yeah, well, I can give a little bit of sort of backstory here as well. And for Commissioner Bennett, we had sort of gone through this public engagement period in March and April, where we highlighted, I'm really digging back into my memory here. I think it was $40 to $50 million worth of requests, and quite a few positions as well. So really looking across the agency at our need and our new program initiatives that could sort of push us forward as an agency. And then it was sort of in that early summer period where we had gotten that guidance around keeping it to like a 1% current service level budget. I would flag that 4 of our housing policy option packages were actually agency initiated. So it came from staff and public feedback that we had gotten around what would be helpful for our local partners. And then 5 of those were specifically directed out of the governor's housing production framework, which I believe was first daylighted during the May legislative session. So right at the end of May, or legislative days, I should say. And then we were sort of working off of that over the summer. We submitted this request, the agency request budget, August 8th, 2024. And we're what's called an early submittal agency. So we actually submit that a month before other agencies do. They have a September deadline, which we will be on. Sorry, this is like maybe not super relevant information, but we are growing up as an agency and we will be on sort of the normal submittal timeline for the next budget cycle, which will be in September. But so then in the fall, the governor's office, as I said, works with our department and sort of looks across the state enterprise at all of the policy option packages that have been submitted, as well as current service level budgets and the sort of budget projections for the states that have been released, and works to sort of create a balanced budget within the GRB, as it's called. And so we will get pulled into that a little bit to have conversations around sort of what shape our POPs take in there. And then after it is released on December 2nd, we will go into the legislative session in January of 2025. I don't think a date has been landed on, but it's usually mid-January that starts. And then our budget documents will go to the Joint Ways and Means Committee of the legislature, and they will consider it along with other bills that are coming through the legislature, as well as other agency budget requests, both current service level and their policy option packages. And then the legislature will have the fun job of creating a budget for the next cycle. And so we really won't know where these end up for sure until late June of 2025. So it'll go through sort of that layer of the governor's office and then the legislature to get us to the final products.
Nice. Thank you. I think with that, we're going to conclude item number 5.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report and all the questions from the commissioners. We're running very early on our agenda, which we're enjoying. So we're thinking about just going through agenda item number 6 now and not taking a break, and then we will be ending most likely very early. So agenda item number 6 is commission business, and we will receive an update from the Budget and Management, which is called BAM Subcommittee. And we'll also hear a briefing on Achievement and Community Engagement Awards. And we will be voting on a new member for the CIC, which is the Citizen or Community Involvement Advisory Committee. So with that, Director.
Madam Chair, the other thing that we have started to do as part of commission business is give commissioners an opportunity to report in not only on the happenings in their particular region over the last quarter since the commission last met, but also an opportunity to reflect on any observations that you've had coming out of the commission tour, which we had this morning when we were up at Frere's Lumber. And so there's an opportunity to go down the line and provide some of those inputs and observations. If you'd like to start there, that'd be great.
Yeah, great. Maybe Commissioner Thompson, would you like to start?
FEMA BIOP, Habitat Conservation Plan, FEMA flood maps. Oh my goodness. There's a lot of concern about the impact on the on the lives and livelihoods of coastal people up and down the coast, but also along the Columbia, that are impacted by initiatives that that have the objective of improving the climate. But for example, one of the things about the offshore wind energy is, what about the impact on the fish? Because the fishermen say, you know, the fish have particular, I want to say, paths under the ocean where they are used to going to be able to feed. And if the offshore wind doesn't take those into account, what's the impact on the fish and the fisher folk and the, you know, all of the impact on food? And there's so much to consider when we're looking at complex, adaptive, interactive systems and goals that are all noble, but how do they impact life for people? So I think we're seeing that and really looking to the department. Dr. Bateman's been communicating with us to indicate the department's attention to this, and that's very reassuring. And we need that right now. So that's that piece of it. When we went to Freris, it's so exciting to see the potential of an innovative company that's using the natural world and is part of, I want to say their roots are in that community. They talk to us about the fire season and the community response to that. They talk to us about how they want to see multifamily housing. I know there's interest in individual housing. I mean, it's inspiring to me to see that a family-owned company, 4 generations, is rooted in that community and wants to make a difference worldwide. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bennett, and you have to practically touch this. Yes. Yeah. People online.
First of all, for Eastern and Central Oregon, I guess since the June meeting, they have been besieged. About 1.5 million plus acres, almost 2 million acres have burned. So that's been a large challenge in a number of different at a number of different levels. Air quality, there was the tribal nations. Everybody's been impacted, along with the state's budget, to be quite frankly. Oregon Department of Forestry is 47 million in the hole right now. So that may affect that, or that 1%. So that's something we need to keep in mind. Commissioner Thompson bringing up about the FEMA floodplain and T&E, that's of concern. A lot of it, I know the county commissioners are extremely concerned. I don't know. There's so much to be discovered. It's going to be a lot of learning for all. But on the bright spot, like Commissioner Thompson and Chair, it was a great tour today, and it was really exciting to see something new, innovative. It's really exciting to see a corporation. Commissioners, you missed out on that. A really outstanding tour that they would be as committed as they are to build a building that large. I mean, it was just an awe-inspiring building, and it was just a warehouse. I really encourage you, if you get a chance, go to Mill City and see a warehouse. I can't describe it enough. I mean, just walk around. It wasn't the warehouses that I grew up looking at. It was like unbelievable. But I think the serious part is that it's, you know, it's something new and it's cutting edge, and Oregon's there. Oregon's the leader, the chair. She has a large role in that in the background, and that's to be commended also. And I think just that we, as a state, as a commission, as an agency, need to help them move forward. There's going to be some hiccups in this whole process, and we're naive if we don't think so. But if we can stand alongside them to whatever degree and help that whole industry evolve and move forward, it's going to be really exciting down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Warren?
Thank you, Chair. I have to apologize for not being able to be there today or tomorrow. I had a late meeting last night and then a meeting this morning that I had to attend for work. So sorry to miss the tour. Around our region, down in Southern Willamette Valley, we are focused on housing. Both the cities of Eugene and Springfield are pretty much doing everything they can at this point to remove as many barriers to producing housing as they can. Both cities are also working to designate climate-friendly areas right now. So that's been kind of an exciting process to watch. They both have taken different approaches and are both going to have different outcomes as well. And it's more to do with the fact that one city has done more work in the past to kind of align themselves with urban planning goals and strategies than other cities have. So it's interesting to see how our rules from the state level have impacted two cities that are very close together in very different ways. Other than that, the city of Eugene is struggling to figure out how to pay for all the services that they provide to the city. They're looking at about an $8 million budget shortfall right now. And I think that's probably pretty true for a lot of cities around the state because the property tax cap revenues have not raised as fast as expenses. Other than that, nothing else really to report right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Warren. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Chair. So I too must apologize for not being there. I'm working a big project in Missoula that we're just getting ready to wrap up here. Kind of exciting. But having worked in the wood product industry for about 30 years of my career, I'm familiar with Ferris's manufacturing. I've never been able to tour their site, and so I'm very sorry that I missed that today. I would have loved to have seen that. But I can tell you that Ferris is a well-respected partner in the industry, and they are known as being very responsible players. And so I'm just tickled that they opened their doors for the tour today. So I'm glad you guys all had a really great time. Hopefully I'll be able to catch up with you and tour it here pretty soon. And then following Commissioner Warren's lead there, Southern Oregon is also kind of looking at trying to open up opportunities for housing. And I guess on an upside, they Douglas County just approved the big urban growth boundary swap that the city and the county have been working on for many years, and so that was successful. So finally got it through here very recently, and so kudos to the city of Roseburg and county for getting that through. And lastly, the last thing I'd like to share is the opportunity that I've had sitting on the commission to participate in my first RAC, and it was the Target Industries approach, and it wasn't an overly complicated rulemaking. I think it was fairly. They had definitely some clear goals in mind, but it was such an educational opportunity for me. It was so neat to see the staff. They are so professional, and I think they work really hard to try to understand different perspectives. And I got to tell you, for as many RACs as I have sat on over the years, I was so impressed with the staff. So thank you for that opportunity. I guess we get to talk about that one tomorrow. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Let me put my glasses on here. Yeah, so I think Anya, Chair Anya Feyhalova in the Portland area. Yeah, I think, we're definitely like at this inflection point. I don't know how to describe it between, the federal government potential changes and, well, definitely there will be changes, right, in leadership at the federal government. And then also the whole entire city of Portland's government structure changing. And so I think there's definitely a sense of a holding pattern, I guess, in my world. And then I think at the same time, interest rates have been really high and they just started going down lower. So that's sort of contributing to the holding pattern. I think some things that will be coming out, I think after those changes, the political changes happen, then it kind of frees up, at least from the real estate development perspective, seeing what all these policies, reduction in regulations, investments can do kind of for the next cycle, I would say. I would include in that the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund at the federal government level. So there's a huge amount of dollars that will start to be available to people across the United States to do, solar and energy efficiency and all sorts of things. So I think that's important. Interest rates reducing is hugely important. I know some material pricing has gone down, given that the slowness in the market, which is not necessarily great for industry, but it is good for spurring housing and real estate development. And so it was fun. I think I had mentioned maybe last time to see, the work that was done in 2019 around housing production strategies, finally making it down into the ground in the city of Portland. And so it's like sort of like the government's put all these things in place, but really we need market factors to kind of start that engine. I think the big one is in the affordable housing world is the lack of available funding for affordable housing, with hitting the cap at the state level with regard to availability of low-income housing tax credit and other measures. So it's just when we're at our most critical need, some of the major funding and or tools that are needed to kind of spur that are not happening. I know that there was an effort at the federal government level to open up increased low-income housing tax credit availability, and even thinking about a middle housing tax credit also. But I think all of those are kind of stalled out, at least the last time I looked, because nobody wants to make any moves before the election. So I'm really hopeful with the idea. This is my hope. Increase in low-income housing tax credits, this middle housing, and those would happen at the federal government level, interest rates going down, and then kind of ease in regulations toward housing. And then all of those hopefully will spur new housing. So, but right now we're in a hold. Frere's tour was awesome. As some of you know, I talked about, I've used their product in a project that I've worked in. And so I know a lot about it, but I never had the chance to come and see the facility. And so it was just great. The particular tour we took, which was like, we saw a log and then we saw finished products at the end of the tour. So to see all those different steps of production and really the value add that the company brought to the wood products, and that really comes back into the Oregon economy. So that was really exciting, and really going out and about nationally and, internationally. Like, we're known in Oregon to be kind of the big center in the mass timber movement. So especially with how can I fail to mention the new airport? Kind of a big deal. I don't know how many of you have been there yet. How many of you have seen the airport, the new airport? Okay. That's really going to change the perception of our state and our region when people come through that airport. I've been following it, tracking it, toured it during construction. I'm like the biggest fan ever. And when I walked through that airport for the first time, like, I almost cried, and I'm not even joking, because it was that emotionally impactful, from like the biophilic sense, from especially if you know about the stories of the people that, put their heart and energy and the innovation and all that, including the lead designer is my good friend. So there's just like a lot of emotion that you can feel and coming together both in rural and urban economies to create an amazing gateway to our state. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing actually that's happened. And yeah, thank you. And the reason I mentioned the airport is because Frere's lumber is the top of the roof of the whole entire 9 acres. That's their product. So it's nice to link that to where it's actually being produced.
Fantastic. Thank you, Madam Chair. And as we're moving into the second part of the report, which is the BAM report, I'll have folks come forward for that. But while they're getting in place, I just wanted to add my own observations and thanks for this morning's tour and a discussion about tours in general. I know that when we traipse through folks' space and that they lay out everything they're working on, that's a huge investment of their time and their energy and their honesty. I just wanted to thank folks for opening what feels like their homes, but their businesses and their communities to us and spending time with us to make sure we understand what's going on at the local level, and that we're able to really represent them and what's going on with them as we go about doing our work. It's really important. And I just wanted to thank folks for investing in us in the commission and in the staff whenever they give us tours. I also wanted to circle back, and I probably should have said this during the director's report, but just a little update on all things FEMA. We're in the middle of some interim products, and so there's not a lot to show or talk about right at the moment. But I will say, for those who are following some of the newest efforts, correspondence, and communications that is coming out of FEMA, our staff is currently working on FAQ, frequently asked questions, to try to help our local partners navigate some of the more technical pieces of this. The communications that are coming out from FEMA are theirs and not ours, but we have been in this space with them. We think in some ways we know partially what they're thinking. And so we're trying to, where we think we have additional information or detail, share that with our local partners. So we're putting together an FAQ that's currently in development right now. We are also talking about using our existing resources, which are little, but trying to do some more analysis around the potential for impact throughout Oregon. Right, I think it's 31 of the 36 counties that we know will be implicated by this FEMA National Flood Insurance Program map. But within that, we're trying to get a better grip on what kind of lands, particularly within urban growth boundaries, might be affected, and even amongst that, which properties are developed versus not developed. Just what might the scope of the impact be as we start to get into implementation. So we're wanting to do a little bit of analysis around that. That's not ready yet either. And the third piece that is not quite ready yet is a letter from the state. So there have been several jurisdictions, counties, our congressional district, and other folks have sent letters to FEMA asking them to please pause or push out or somehow postpone December 1st deadline that they've imposed on local jurisdictions. Our letter will follow and read much the same. It will also reiterate a commitment we made more than a year ago as a state to bring the programs that we already have to bear and try to help provide some help with our local partners who have to comply with some of the FEMA requirements, to be allowed to be at the table and be allowed to use some of our programs to take some of that burden. And then the third piece is just a call for more engaged process across the board with not only state, but also local and tribal partners who all have projects, programs, and properties that will be affected by this and would like to be part of a more robust conversation. So all of those pieces are still to come, which is why I didn't put them in the director's report, but it's worth saying that we're working on those. And I want folks to know we are very much engaged on this topic. So, with that, oh, sorry, Deputy Director.
Thank you so much. Just looping back one moment to Mass Timber and the tour. Many of you met Kieran Turnbull, who is an intern and a fellow with us. And just wanted to mention that Kieran and Lee McIlvain, economic development specialists, are wrapping up code updates in 10 wildfire affected communities to be able to accept max timber modular homes as soon as they are beginning to be produced out of T2, Terminal 2 at the Port of Portland. So but just doing, and to Commissioner Bennett, to your point of trying to do everything we can for the industry. So part of that is removing barriers up in communities so that the homes can be sited as quickly as possible going forward. Our commitment is to do 30 codes, but the federal funding provided funding for 10. So we're on track so far. Thank you.
And with that, we'll turn the mic over for a budget and management committee update.
All right, Chair, hello, commissioners. Hello again. For the record, Brandy Nichols, Chief Financial Officer here at DLCD. There we go. All right. So the Budget and Management Subcommittee met on September 3rd and reviewed DLCD's budget status for the current biennium. The report on the screen reflects the budget status report at the time of that meeting. And as you can see from the heading, it's also reflective of the first half or the first fiscal year of this current biennium, our 2023-25. So after the first year, DLCD's projections show a very minor surplus for general fund operations at the end of the biennium. In previous reports, DLCD was actually projecting a general fund shortfall by the end of our 2023-25 biennium. And so the department has implemented essentially a three-prong approach to be able to finish this biennium within budget. So first component of that, following guidance we received from Governor's Office and legislative advisors, DLCD will make full use of the Housing Accountability and Production Office funding, operational funding that was provided in 2024 legislative session through Senate Bill 1537. Previously, DLCD had taken care to very selectively use these resources as they were provided as part of a statutorily dedicated fund. So again, following the guidance that we received from a meeting and discussion with advisors from the governor's office and legislative committees, our management team took an expanded look at department positions that are doing work to support the standing up of this new office, this new Housing Accountability and Production Office. And we've developed a plan to charge appropriate costs for their time and for their work to that HAPO fund. These are positions and personal services costs that ordinarily would have been charged to our regular general fund operations fund. But because we are able to identify their work being done specifically to support standing up the new HAPO office, we are able to charge those costs to that HAPO operational funding that we were given. Other operational decisions between now and the end of June include holding 4 positions vacant to generate some cost savings and looking at reducing services and supplies expenditures across categories. So the DLCD management team over the next 8-9 months until, as we get through June 2025, we will continue to actively scrutinize costs and make prudent spending decisions to meet our core mission, get the work done that we need to get done, but again, with an eye toward carefulness and prudent choices in spending. And the management team will also continue to actively monitor budget status to help ensure that we finish the current biennium within budget. One note I will share, you may have noticed from looking at the report, a note I will share about the HAPO operations funding. We are at the time of this report, we were 50% complete through the biennium. And if you look at the spreadsheet, a very small percentage, only 3% of that funding had been spent as of the end of June. This funding and the positions that came along with it were newly given to the department in the 2024 legislative session. DLCD really only had access to that funding and the positions, starting in April. And these positions were also added into program areas across the department. So it took time for DLCD to really review the positions that they were given, decide what their business purpose is, what their function should be, and get their duties set up correctly. Additionally, the new manager for the HAPO unfortunately took 2 recruitment rounds to be successful, 2 recruitments to get that position filled. And the department really wants that position filled before recruiting to fill the other position so that that manager can be there to guide staff and have a hand in building that team. So as we move into the second year of the biennium, the spend rate on this HAPO operational funding will definitely pick up as those positions are filled, as that first component of our plan is implemented, where we're able to charge other appropriate staff time into that fund, and as work on rulemaking and housing related studies progresses. And with that, that's my summary report. I would be happy to take questions if there are any.
Commissioner Bennett.
Thank you, Brandy. Tell me maybe it's not you to tell me, but what's going to be the repercussion of the redirection of those funds by the legislator that was really pushing for that? because there's always a cost benefit ratio on these things. And we're going into a new budget and we're not getting a lot of funding, but yet I see that by the redirection, I think one of the legislators is going to go, well, I already pushed, that was my pet project. Maybe this should be the director. I'll be fair, or the deputy director. This was my pet project. I put the money in there at your behest, and now you absorbed it in to operate. How's this going to work? Because we're already down to 1%.
Great, that's a great question, Commissioner. Part of what happened in Senate Bill 1539 was not only the legislature, we really appreciated, and with the governor's support, recognized that we not only needed housing specific programs and positions, but also the support for them, that those folks aren't operating on their own. It's not all them, but that there's an entire agency behind them that provides the IT, the contracts, the HR, the communications, the government relations, all the support that they need. They probably need to get paid. They probably need computers. And so all of that was put together in a separate and special fund, which made it really difficult for an agency and agency leadership that normally has funds that are more dollars that are more fungible to move things around and manage their agency as they need to. Because it was cordoned off, it made it really difficult. So what we ended up doing was getting permission to use that fund as a support for the work that is taking place in that housing space. And mostly we're looking at the allowances or the expenses that are allowable, and they will be for the rent and the, all of the pieces that do support housing. And so just making sure that we can pull its fair share back out and charge things appropriately is what we're doing. But we really needed that permission just because of how the funds were originally set up. And we knew that was going to be a problem back in the spring. We asked them not to do it. And then we asked to go to emergency board to have things restructured. And they said, really, there's other things going on. We'll just give you the permission to charge things into that fund appropriately. So we in the end, the outcome isn't very different. We're just getting to it structurally a different way. And the folks that we've talked to, both on the executive branch and the legislative branch, have been supportive of that so that the agency is healthy.
Commissioners, any other questions? Okay. Director Bateman, thank you for your report. And I think I don't know if it was on here, but Vice Chair Alan Lazo and myself are on the BAM committee. So we hear these things periodically before they're brought in front of the commission.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I was gonna say, that's why I don't have any questions.
If I may, I'm just going to move us through the commission business staff report pretty much in order. And so the next piece that we wanted to bring to you was a look at the upcoming commission meeting calendar. And there were a couple pieces on here that I just wanted to bring to your attention and talk about briefly. You may remember when I started in this position, I made a commitment to hold fewer meetings with the commission because you work awfully hard. You might have noticed there are more meetings on here than we would have liked. And it's because we have a couple of special meetings coming up specifically so we can meet our deadlines on rule adoption. And so October, our next meeting, which is one-day meeting, virtual meeting, you could scratch out Salem if you like, but it's a virtual meeting. October 25th will be one day, and that's specifically so that we can hear and have a public comment around the ONA rules, which are still in formulation. They're still undergoing their RAC meetings. And so they weren't quite ready to have that in this meeting. And that's all to prepare for a rules action in December, at your December meeting. So rule adoption they're many and they're coming your way, and they will be in December and January. So January is also, you'll notice, quick on the heels of the December meeting and is unusual in how we would normally have scheduled items. We want to get our rule adoptions and all of our staff and commissioner work completed so that our legislative and policy folks and our agency leadership are freed up for the legislative session so we can participate. And I will say honestly too, we have so many folks from across the community that are participating in our rules advisory committees that they also want to be freed up and ready to be in the Capitol and fully present for legislative session. And it's not fair to try to be running these efforts while they're also across the street in the building. So we're going to wrap up all of the rules that are underway. We're aiming for December and January rule adoption. So in person, if possible, would be fantastic because there'll be a lot of discussion, a lot of Q&A back and forth, and I think pretty intense sessions there in December and January. We then have our meetings scheduled into 2025. We wanted to try to get those dates on the calendar sooner than we had been in the past. And so hopefully you can start to get your calendars planned a little bit better around these meetings. In March, we'd like to combine a meeting if we can with a possible commission retreat. We still aren't quite sure what that looks like, but I know the commissioners have been asking for this for a while. It's an opportunity to do some team building and some strategic thinking and to really dig in and do some visioning about the future. So we would love to make that time with you in the March meeting. And then you'll notice really between now and the end of legislative session, so now through the end of our June meeting, we're scheduled to be in Salem. Partly that is because some of us can't get very far from the Capitol during legislative session, and we're tied to that building. But it also helps us with our budget shortfall. So moving only the commissioners for these meetings instead of commissioners and staff saves us about 50% of our costs. So that's something that we'll plan on, and we regret that, right? Because as we saw today, and we do every time we're out in the community, it makes all the difference to see with our own eyes what's going on. But we'll try to plan some things in and around the Salem area for the next several months. Let's see, just a note about next September, we were supposed to be in Scappoose in this meeting, and we're pushed out by a year, both from their side with change in staff and some projects that are underway that they want to roll out and showcase to us next September. And so that worked out really well for us to postpone by a year. And then next fall and winter, we'll be out of legislative session. We'll be free to travel. We'll be in a new budget year. We can't wait to see where we go. We haven't decided that yet. So hopefully those dates will be a little bit helpful for you and your calendars. Please let us know if some dates don't work for you, and if we end up with a critical mass that will not be present, of course, we'll recalibrate, but hopefully this is enough in advance that you can plan. Any questions on dates and locations?
Commissioners?
Okay.
No questions.
All right. Good. Let's see, moving along to our matrix of commissioner assignments. This is another attachment that we try to remember to put in your packets every single time so that you have it as a reference. There's short blurbs that describe what each of our committees do. And then the very last piece, the very last page is a matrix of commissioner. These are really the ancillary assignments that each of the commissioners take on. And on the front page, it's page 1 of attachment 6 or C. These are the standing committees. And then on the very last page, there are some time-bound or temporary committees that folks serve on. So you get a pretty good look across the board. You'll note that the committees that Commissioner Lilac was sitting on, they need to be filled. And interestingly, there's a column for Commissioner Bennett that seems to be blank. So we can have a conversation around that, and I'll turn it back to the chair for your thoughts.
Yeah, so we've been talking about appointing Commissioner Bennett as liaison to the LOAC, Local Officials Advisory Committee. And I believe you know about this, Commissioner Bennett. Yeah. And then also, and we'll give more details. And the second one was to also pointing you to the Solar on Farmland Rulemaking and Eastern Oregon Rules Advisory Committee. So I don't know if there was anything you wanted to say about LOAC, but we have the descriptions of each of the committees on the, yeah. Yeah. Was there anything you wanted to say about LOAC?
Well, I was thinking since LOAC is near and dear to Deputy Green's heart because she sits with that group and has formed some deep bonds that she might like to say a little bit more than what's currently on the page about what the committee does.
Sure. Thank you. Chair Halova, Commissioners, and Director Bateman. We love the Local Officials Advisory Committee because we get to hear from and see and communicate with elected leaders from around Oregon. So it's a real blessing. The chair of the group right now is Nancy Wise. She's a commissioner with Benton County. And the vice chair is Mayor Rory Belasowski in Westland. And we have a good committee. There's representation. We look for geographic representation from around the state. We really focus on rulemaking in their advisory role to the commission. This is one of LCDC's statutorily required. Actually, there's 3 if you include the Grants Advisory Committee, but there are 3 advisory committees in statute that have a responsibility to advise the commission, and LOAC is one. So we focus this year, we've been focusing a lot on rulemaking. That LOAC is interested in engaging a little bit more with Ms. Sadie Carney and communications and engagement realm. But we haven't quite gotten to that because the rulemaking has been so thick. But perhaps next year. So perhaps that's enough, but happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Chair?
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, LOAC, maybe it's because I'm a local elected official, but I'd like to hear more from LOAC. Do we ever have them come and participate in our meetings in any way? Because it's wonderful to have a liaison. That's great, but more. Is that possible?
Thank you. Chair Commissioner Thompson, thank you. We would like to do that. We have not since COVID, but we would like to do that. We've been trying to do it in the alternate year with the Committee for Citizen Engagement, Community Engagement. So this would be our year. 2025 would be our year. So perhaps I could work with Director Bateman on looking for one of the agendas to have that joint meeting and the commissioners. Yeah. No, we look forward to that. So do they. We do. You might remember some of LOAC came to our Bend meeting and were present with us. Counselor Adams from Astoria and Chair Wise came down for that discussion as well. So that was really cool. But let's have a full joint meeting if we can. Thank you. Good idea.
I was asking, it's not there. It was just appointing. I don't think there was any vote, and hopefully you accepted this appointment, and we'll put you on the chart. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Yes. And we try to share out the responsibilities in a equitable time manner, and so we're happy that you can serve on those too.
I've got a bit more. Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. You'll see we had so many rulemakings this last year that every commissioner got an ancillary assignment with a rulemaking advisory committee. So thank you for that. We would like to turn now to the Community Involvement Advisory Committee, which has 2 pieces that need to happen this afternoon, including a vote or an action taken on your part. And so I will turn the microphone over to Sadie Carney, who I believe may have someone online with her. And will there also be a time for public comment or an opportunity for public comment?
I believe there is.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Bateman. Good afternoon, Chair Halova and Commissioners. For the record, I am Sadie Carney, Communications and Engagement Manager, and I'm here today presenting on behalf of the Citizen Involvement Advisory Committee, now operating under the name Community Involvement Advisory Committee. Our last meeting was on August 23rd, 2024. And the CIAC's agenda for that meeting included the review of applications for the vacant position in Congressional District 3, which is a lot of the Portland metro area and kind of extending east through Clackamas County and to parts of Hood River County. And I do want to extend special thanks to Chair Halova for your help in identifying appropriate community-based organizations to reach out directly to and make aware of the opportunity. in response to that, and just so that I could understand what the benefits of that type of outreach might be, we opened 2 different survey collectors, so pointing at the same application, but we sent one link directly to our CBO partners through those conversations and another using our traditional forms of outreach. And we had an equal share of applications from both groups. So that was a really great idea, great results. And so, but time intensive. But it works, right? And so one thing that I wanted to make you aware of at this opportunity is that we will be opening recruitments for 2 positions that need to be filled in April next month, so that we have a long window of opportunity for that kind of engagement and direct outreach. One of our positions that's becoming vacant is an at-large position, so statewide. So I'm happy to take recommendations from anyone on different community-based organizations or interest groups that we should reach out to. And the other is for Congressional District 2, which, welcome aboard, Commissioner Bennett. That is you in Eastern Oregon. So we're hoping to have appointments to make, though these terms don't end until April. One is currently vacant. We're hoping to make appointments, or at least have those people in attendance at our joint meeting with LCDC and the CIAC in March. So looking forward to all of that. And as always, I would be remiss if I did not recognize Ingrid Caudell, who offers her administrative support to me and to this group and really helps things stay on track. So thank you so much, Ingrid. So at our August meeting, our CIAC members reviewed 8 applications, of which 6 were submitted by persons living in the qualifying congressional district. And the Community Involvement Advisory Committee unanimously recommends Maria Sippin for appointment to, or by the commission to, the Community Involvement Advisory Committee. For a little background on our applicant, Maria has served on the Portland Clean Energy Community Benefits Fund Committee for a term of more than 4 years, is a transportation planner and climate justice advocate. The grandchild of migrant farm workers, Maria is a public health professional and civic educator who specializes in simplifying how government processes are communicated with the public. They are an expert on participatory budgeting and facilitating processes to increase community power and transparency on how public funds are used. There is a proposed motion in your packet, and I believe we also have a slide that we can bring up that has the same language. And I believe our candidate is also available, and perhaps if she is recommended or appointed by the commission, you would like to take this opportunity to share your congratulations or a few words.
Nice. We wanted to see if there was any public comment for this agenda item. And then see if any commissioners have questions or comments, or should we hear some words from, yeah, we'd love to hear from nominee Maria.
Hello, I can speak now.
Yes, thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Again, my name is Maria Sippin. My pronouns are they or she. I live in Portland. Thank you for recommending me for appointment to the Land Conservation and Development Commission's Community Involvement Advisory Committee. I'm here thanks to the support and training I received from 1000 Friends of Oregon and their Land Use Leadership Initiative, among many other community members who encouraged me to step up to a role like this one. Like so many of my planning peers from Portland State University, Oregon's Planning Goal 1 has always been a fixture of our studies and our practice. And community engagement is just so important to me as a community member and as a civic educator. Who's wanted to create more meaningful public participation and eventually more community power and learning in the process. I'm here to learn too, and that's why I've signed up. I spent the last 4 years on the Portland Clean Energy Fund Committee, so I'm no stranger to committees that have all kinds of tasks and sometimes not a whole lot to do in between meetings, but I'm up for the challenge. Prior to that, I worked on youth COVID recovery projects in East Portland to Clackamas and Gresham. And even before that, with the Oregon Department of Transportation, from Hillsborough to Hood River, to plan and implement impactful projects for walking and biking. So communities in this region have meant a lot to me for housing equity, health, and climate justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Do any of the commissioners have any comments or questions? Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you. Well, you come with a very impressive and I would say inspiring set of experiences and credentials. I wonder about your curiosity or your experience with more rural areas of Oregon outside that metro area.
Sure. I've had some recent experience actually working on climate recovery or climate change recovery, fire recovery, and more community engagement in Central Oregon, specifically in areas like Medford, trying to build up the capacity of Latinx communities to be able to advocate for their needs with local governments to better represent them as they recover from extreme weather events. There are parts of the Portland metro area, like just outside of places like Gresham, between Gresham and Hood River, and all the way to the Mount Hood area in communities like Welch's, where I've had the privilege to be able to plan highway projects and try to advance safe routes to schools work, so that young people and students in those areas can walk or bike, even though we know there are a lot of geographic and land use challenges that make connectivity in their communities really challenging.
Thank you. I can't see if any of the commissioners online have any comments or questions. No. Okay. Super exciting. Loved hearing about your background and your interest and your involvement in all things related to land use. A lot of different areas you touch on. With that, we have a motion to appoint Maria to the committee, and I don't know if we can pull up the motion. Nice. Would any of the commissioners like to make the motion? Nice.
Do you want to? Okay, great. All right. So here I am. Madam Chair.
And then I was like, and then, sorry, I want to second it. I can't remember if there's just read it before you second it. Yeah.
She has to read it. Did she read it?
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead and read
Do
it.
you want me to read it?
Yes.
Because I can, okay, here we go. Madam Chair, Commissioners, I move that the Land Conservation and Development Commission appoint Maria Sippen to represent Congressional District 3 on the Citizen Involvement Advisory Committee, operating under the name Community Involvement Advisory Committee for a term of 4 years.
Would somebody like to second?
Madam Chair, I'll second the motion.
Thank you. And so we are going to do the roll call.
Commissioner Stuart Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Bennett, Commissioner Leanne Thompson,
Aye.
Commissioner Ellen Porter,
Aye.
Commissioner Barbara Boyer is absent. Vice Chair Alan Lazo is absent. Chair Anjali Halova.
Aye. And with that, the motion passes, and welcome to the committee. Thank you. Our little tiny claps that you can't hear. We're excited to have you. I'm wondering, what's our next?
Madam Chair, Sadie will continue with a report from this committee based on the recent ACE awards. Yes.
Thank you very much, Director Bateman. Chair Halova and commissioners, I certainly can. They are outlined in your packet, and we did mention them briefly, ever so briefly, at your meeting in Bend. Let's see, that was June 26 to 28. And at that time, you were seated in the recipients for this year's most outstanding project for large jurisdictions, which went to Bend, Oregon, for the city's climate-friendly area designation. We have more information available about this in their application, which is available on our website. And I'm happy to say that I am also working with my colleague Julia in the comms and engagement team to develop some kind of better looking, easier to read 2-pagers on these. So color front and back that will just make the information more accessible at a glance. And I'm very excited to let you all know when those are available on our website. But I think it'll make these more the communications and learning tool that we are hoping. But that is not the City of Bend's project. That's mine. The City of Bend, they led, so a lot of our ACE Award applications, when they come in, it's, we have to think, okay, is this a consultant's work? Who's doing the application? This is a city-led project, and they really went above and beyond in their requirements, above and beyond the requirements of the climate-friendly and equitable communities rules in engaging the public about their climate-friendly area designation. In response to the need to engage vulnerable communities, they focused on language-specific events, translated materials, offered stipends, childcare, and food at certain events. They invested in personal outreach during the process and significant time in coordinating with the local community college Latino leadership program and with the Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs. And I will say, while it has been a while since we reviewed these applications and looked at them closely, one thing that really stood out to me in the City of Bend's application was as they were engaging with communities that have been difficult to engage in the past, marginalized communities, those that have been underinvested and underrepresented in government processes in general, they came up with a map to describe the climate-friendly areas. And before presenting that to the public, and this was based on their early engagement with these groups, they took it back to that group and allowed the group to say, no, change this language here. We don't want this section to be called that. We don't want, and they made edits and revisions to their materials before then presenting them to a larger audience. So it was really a close listening to the community that elevated, I think, this work beyond what we saw in, the other projects. There were a lot of wonderful projects to consider. It's not ever easy to make this decision and pick just one, because when we see ACE Award applications, no city or local government is submitting work that they think is bad. They think it's best. They think it's worthy of award. And by and large, they are. It is a struggle year after year to say, this one actually did it a little bit better. And there's so many different aspects of the projects, right? Each project is so unique. It's not evaluating or grading a test. It's really just kind of this extremely complicated, multivariate, thing that's coming to you in kind of an encapsulated form. And it really is a challenge to choose which ones are best. But Bend really did, if we called it a score, which we don't, but it really was evaluated highest by the most people on the group. And then we also have another most outstanding project, and this is because we received them from large jurisdictions like Bend, but also from very small jurisdictions, very small cities. And we know that the resources they have available to them are extremely different. And so the second project that I'll highlight for you today is this year's Most Outstanding Project Award for Small Jurisdictions, which was awarded to Morrow County, Oregon for their Rural Transit Equity Initiative. To better engage the significant Latino and Spanish-speaking population in Morrow County in transit use, the county partnered with two regional community-based organizations, the Rural Engagement and Vitality Center based at Eastern Oregon University, and Uvalcree, which I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And these groups already had relationships with the communities they were seeking to engage. And this application, when it came in, was actually Morrow County nominating these two community-based organizations for an ACE award, not themselves. We have recognized all three groups with an Achievement in Community Engagement Award. But this, their successful outreach began with a survey that was designed and analyzed by a professor and students at Eastern Oregon University. And then one-on-one engagement followed that and was a real feature of this work. And Morrow County is actually planning to update their Goal 1 plan to better implement the recommendations that they developed from this work. And I do want to do a special call out for our rural transit equity work, and we have a current planner in housing. I forget Madeline Phillips' title, but she was previously our rural transportation equity planner. And we have managed to get her onto our housing team now, but she assisted them in this work and really sat down with them out in Eastern Oregon and helped them come up with a plan that then they were able to execute. And she is named specifically as somebody who provided assistance and inspiration for this project in the application as well. So great news in Morrow County. And I wish I could just talk about all of our projects here because there were so many good ones, but we elected only to offer 3 awards. We would take commission advice on providing a trophy for everyone. But our third is a project of special significance that was awarded to Washington County, Oregon for its Council Creek Regional Trail Project. This was a very complicated project. And if you look at their application and you can just see the jurisdictional and project partner, logos across the top of the page, it was TriMet, it was Washington County, it was like 3 different communities. It was a lot of coordination. And for those of us who have worked in a planning space, you know what that can mean. It adds a lot of complexity to a project when you are working with the oversight of that many different boards and commissions, quite honestly. So this shared community vision grew from the Council Regional Trail Master Plan, which was authored in 2015. And with the help of a consultant team, Washington County undertook this multi-jurisdictional engagement project with almost 40 community-based organizations involved. Demographics analysis and targeted outreach led to successful engagement of many underrepresented and difficult to reach populations. And the project team found that meeting communities where they already are and focusing on cultural events had a positive impact on their process. And it's maybe perhaps not evident in the name, but this is a Rails to Trails project that is providing active recreational opportunities for people, specifically some from lower income communities where there might not be more than 1 car for a household, to connect them with this regional system. So 3 great news stories. And this is why you save the CIAC for last. You start with an amazing tour and then you finish up the day with this kind of great news. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners? Thank you from Commissioner Bennett. We're sharing a mic. Hi, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've been watching the awesome social media that the department's been doing online. Awesome. Really great graphics, really great content, very engaging. And so I'm hoping that there's going to be a little story on social media about all of these to share with the broader community. And maybe when you were talking about that 2-pager, then there's a link to, like, if you want to learn more and it links to that 2-pager, that'd be cool.
It is, Chair Holova, and Commissioners, thank you for the recommendation. We have started, and really when I said that every project deserves recognition, we have started with some of the projects that were not officially recognized. And so I think we'll kind of work our way up to the grand finale, I guess, as it were. But I mean, it's such a delight to share this kind of information and to sort of ask the different groups and elevate this kind of work.
Yeah, it's basically becoming a book of best practices.
That's my hope.
So it's exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Well done. Thank you, Sadie.
Thank you, Sadie.
Madam Chair, we're just wrapping up this portion of the meeting. You'll see the last piece is on the Local Officials Advisory Committee. That committee met recently to hear updates on all of the rulemakings that are underway. And as we hear from staff members tomorrow, providing updates on each rulemaking, they'll actually have some feedback that they'll bring into each of those conversations that they received from LOAC. So we'll leave any of those comments till each of the items tomorrow. And with that, we wrap up the commission business.
Thank you. So that concludes our last agenda item for today. We're going to recess the meeting from now until 8 a.m. tomorrow, when we will begin with agenda item number 7, which is rulemaking farm modernization project. So thank you for being with us today, and we'll see you tomorrow.